2023 was, without a doubt, a really good year for animation. A lot of different content was released, movies, shows, independent animation. Some stuff was fantastic, while some was pretty disappointing. So let's talk a bit about animation of 2023. There were two movies that disappointed me immensely last year. Both movies are by big animation studios. DreamWorks released Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, the movie which I personally was looking forward to watching. The story seemed interesting and the characters likable enough, but the movie was such a disappointment. The idea was great. There is a teenage girl named Ruby Gillman. She and her family are Krakens, but they live among humans pretending to be humans. Ruby learns that Krakens were fighting for control over the oceans with evil mermaids, and this is one of the reasons why Ruby's parents decided to leave the ocean. One day Ruby meets a new girl at school named Chelsea, who happened to be a mermaid. Fighting old traditions, prejudice, racism, reflecting on the past mistakes are the central themes of American popular culture today. And Ruby Gillman could have been a perfect movie to make a meaningful contribution to this cultural pivot. Ruby and Chelsea become good friends. Ruby's mother warns her daughter that mermaids are evil and untrustworthy. But Chelsea is kind and gentle, and friendship with her proves that you can't judge someone by their kind, their nationality, or their race. This could potentially be a really great message, but DreamWorks completely botched it. Chelsea turns out to be completely comically evil. What kind of lesson is that? Listen to your racist parents because sometimes they're right and certain groups of people really are evil by default. What can this movie teach the kids? Maybe it won't make kids in the US or in Canada racist, but in other less progressive parts of the world, where chauvinism seems to be a national ideology, in the age when culture finally takes a good stand against intolerance and old prejudices, Ruby Gillman looks absolutely out of place. I don't even understand how the script was approved in the first place, because it is not a movie that any studio should be proud of making. I feel like the only idea that creators of this film had was to mock Disney. 2023 is Disney's centennial anniversary, so people came up with a brilliant idea to make a movie that makes fun of Disney again. After all, this is precisely how DreamWorks' popularity started, in 2001 with Shrek. Disney is about to release The Little Mermaid remake, so let's make a movie where the mermaid is a villain. This is gonna be fun, and this is precisely how the movie was probably born. There was no adequate story, no adequate characters, nothing. Ruby Gillman is one of the worst movies of 2023, unfortunately. And the marketing campaign was weird. Trailers spoiled the only plot twist that Chelsea is a villain. I really hope that it was intentionally misleading. I hope that DreamWorks was trying to persuade us that Chelsea is bad, but she gets redeemed at the end of the movie and she and Ruby become actual friends. I was mistaken obviously, and gave DreamWorks too much credit. Another highly disappointing movie is by Disney. It's Wish, and this one is even more disappointing than Ruby Gillman. At least Ruby Gillman wasn't celebrating 100 years of DreamWorks, and wasn't marketed as a story century in the making. Wish has some advantages over DreamWorks film. It has some pretty good musical numbers, like Usher's This Wish. This Wish is a great inspiring song and frankly the best part of the movie, at least to me. Usher herself is a very likable character. But ultimately the movie doesn't live up to its promise. It feels raw, undercooked. The original concept seemed pretty interesting. Magnifico and Amaya were supposed to be the first villainous couple in Disney history. At least that would have been something new creatively. The star was supposed to be a shapeshifter who can talk and take any form instead of just a plushie toy that we had in the actual movie. Wish is a good example of corporate meddling. How a creatively driven story was turned into something completely mediocre, safe and bland. Walt Disney himself would have rejected the script for Wish right away. He would have given writers additional time to rewrite and reshape it into something that can be a good film. Walt was a controversial figure, no doubt about it, but he was a true artist, who was passionate about animation and wanted to use it as an instrument to tell amazing stories. He would have been so disappointed at Wish if he could see it. Disney prioritizes money over quality of the content. Somehow it's deteriorating, because just 7 years ago we had amazing movies, Zootopia and Moana, that were on par with Disney classics. Disney needed the movie to be released in 2023, so the company gave no opportunity to its creators to fix the mistakes and improve. Wish bombed hard at the box office, becoming an icing on the cake of Disney's disastrous year. This is why I think we won't have an animated movie this year. There is a movie that's supposed to be released this November, 2024, but it's still unannounced. I think Disney will push it to 2025. My bet is that the movie is going to be Zootopia 2. I hope Disney won't spiral into sequels rabbit hole after their 4 consecutive original movies flopped. Only Encanto was warmly received by audiences, but even Encanto flopped at the box office. Another animated movie by Disney is Pixar's Elemental. I had very low expectations and, believe me or not, was way more excited to watch Ruby Gillman. Now it feels bizarre, I know. Elemental was a great story in my opinion. It was extremely touching and beautifully made. People say that modern Pixar feels different compared to what the studio was 15 years ago. And this is true. Modern Pixar tells more personal stories and gives voices to groups of people who didn't have their voices before, like second-generation immigrants. Elemental is a very personal story of Peter's son, a director whose family immigrated to the US in the 70s from South Korea. The movie had an extremely low opening weekend, but grossed $500 million because of great word of mouth, since people actually enjoyed it. The thing that hurts Disney animation today is Disney Plus. The window between theatrical release and debut on Disney Plus is too narrow, so many people choose to wait till a movie hits the streaming service. This is especially true for animation because usually whole families go to watch cartoons, and one trip to the theater with your kids can be expensive, so people choose to watch at home. This window must be expanded if Disney wants their cartoons to actually make money and be successful at the box office. Pixar and Disney movies break all sorts of records on Disney Plus, and I absolutely don't want Disney animation to ever become restricted to streaming. Hopefully Disney learned from the mistakes of the past couple of years. The Super Mario Bros. Movie became the highest grossing animated movie since Frozen 2 back in 2019. Honestly, I have a hard time wrapping my head around why. Yes, Super Mario is a very popular video game brand, but video games are still quite niche. As for the movie, I thought it was pretty mediocre. It had some very fun moments, but overall, I wasn't impressed. It's certainly a good movie by Illumination standards, which is not much of a compliment anyway. Illumination probably found a new franchise after Despicable Me, that they'll be milking for the next 15 years. Speaking of the best animated movie of the year, I have a hard time choosing between 2 movies released in June. Across the Spider-Verse and Nimona, released on Netflix. Into the Spider-Verse was great, and it was undoubtedly hard to make the sequel win better, which Sony I think did accomplish. Animation is pure jubilation. Yes, there are some ethical concerns because animators were allegedly abused and overworked, which should not be happening at all obviously. But if I judge only the final product, it's fantastic. Spider-Verse trilogy is very important because it actually pushes the boundaries of animation forward. It progresses the whole medium, which is very important for its development. Nimona is a great transgender allegory. Nimona's shape-shifting is a metaphor. Nimona meets a girl named Glorith. They become good friends. Nimona accidentally gives away her secret, but Glorith accepts Nimona, accepts her being a shapeshifter. After all, why should it even matter? But when the villagers see Nimona, they get scared and they turn Glorith against her friend. This is what happens in real world, where most people are homophobic and transphobic. This movie talks about very important things metaphorically. It was based on a graphic novel by the same name, created by Indy Stevenson, a very talented cartoonist, also a transgender, the creator of She-Ra remake, which is one of the best animated shows of the 2010s in my personal opinion. Nimona was almost cancelled because it was being developed by Blue Sky, and Blue Sky became part of the Disney company. Disney didn't want to risk having such a bold project, so the production was scrapped. But Netflix and Annapurna Pictures resurrected the movie, and the result is absolutely amazing. TMNT Mutant Mayhem is a very decent reboot. This is the best looking animation of the year apart from Across the Spider-Verse. Action scenes look astonishingly good, especially on the big screen. These movies have to be viewed in theaters to truly appreciate the colossal amount of work that animators put into these films. Makoto Shinkai is cementing himself as probably the best anime director working currently. His third full-length movie Suzume is a deeply emotional story that connects to a lot of people in Japan. The main protagonist Suzume lost her mother during the catastrophic earthquake which happened in Japan in March 2011. A lot of people lost someone back then. It was an extremely traumatizing experience and Shinkai reflects on it in his new animated movie. Animation is stunning as usual. Will Shinkai become the new Miyazaki? We'll see, but right now he's on his way. Speaking of Miyazaki, his newest movie The Boy and the Heron was released this year. Unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to see it yet. Might be an unpopular opinion, but Miyazaki hasn't made a great movie in almost 20 years since Howl's Moving Castle. Movies he made after were pretty decent but not great. One thing that you can't take from Miyazaki is that his stories always have something unique and fascinating to offer. Some interesting ideas and thoughts. This is what makes Miyazaki a great storyteller. The Boy and the Heron, I'm sure of it, is not an exception. Attack on Titan ended this year. I watched only 3 seasons and still haven't seen the final one. I think I need to fix this. The first 2 seasons were fantastic. I even read manga even though I don't normally read graphic novels. Speaking of TV shows, we need to return to Disney again. The Owl House ended with 3 40-minute episodes. The final one was actually 50 minutes. The finale was as good as it could be, considering that Disney almost cancelled the show. Disney wanted to save some money. The show started exactly when the coronavirus pandemic hit the world, in February 2020, and many corporations were losing tons of money. Disney Channel executives thought the show wasn't very popular, but Comic-Con New York in October 2022 proved them wrong and made them regret their decision to cut the final season short. The third season gives satisfying conclusions to characters' arcs and wraps up the story in a satisfying way. Though unfortunately a lot of stuff we didn't see. Bosch's entire arc was completely cut off from the show, for example. With the end of The Owl House and Amphibia, Disney's highly serialized plot-driven animation ended too. I started watching Halo Zone it hoping that it would become another plot-driven show. But it's not it. It's a very episodic show with just a way overarching plot and frankly, it's too juvenile compared to Amphibia and The Owl House. So I watched only 10 episodes before I gave up and stopped. The best thing about the show is the opening song performed by one and only Auli Cravalho, whose performance is great as usual. The 2 sci-fi shows that I think deserve way more attention than they receive are Scavenger's Reign and Pantheon. Both shows are extremely underrated. I highly recommend watching these shows, they are very thought-provoking and imaginative. Scavenger's Reign is about personnel from an interstellar cargo ship called Demeter. Some critical malfunction occurs and astronauts get marooned on a planet called Vesta Minor. Now they have to survive on this planet. They encounter fascinating fauna and flora of the planet. The show is based on a short film made in 2016. At times the show might feel quite meditative, meaning that at times the plot pauses and animators get an opportunity to showcase amazing landscapes and living creatures of Vesta. The show also has horror elements. Pantheon is about so-called UI, uploaded intelligence. UI is a human consciousness uploaded online on a special server. The body might age and perish, but the human consciousness, its memories and emotions will remain. The show discusses ethical sides of the UI, the danger that uploaded people might pose to our society. The ending is mind-blowing, and certainly not what you could expect. For me, the best show of this year was Blue Eye Samurai. It's a great revenge story, basically John Wick, but animated, and takes place in the Edo period Japan, when the country was closed and foreigners were not allowed in. The main character Mizu has a Japanese mother and a white father, so she's been shunned her whole life by other people. One night Mizu's home gets burned and her mother gets killed. That's when Mizu decides to become a great samurai and to avenge her mother and herself by killing all 4 white men that were in Japan. The fight scenes are amazingly choreographed and the story is engaging. The main character Mizu has a lot of flaws and she can't be considered a good person. It's just that other people around her are even worse. This makes watching her journey even more interesting. Another Netflix show released in November was Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Honestly, I didn't really enjoy the show. I thought the animation was okay, but the story just wasn't for me. And not because the show is not actually a comic book adaptation, that was fine by me. I already saw the 2009 movie and didn't need to watch the same story again. I think the show should be watched in Japanese because in English voice acting just sounds extremely off, weird acoustics, and voice actors don't seem to be all that much into what's happening on screen. The second season of Invincible was not disappointing. However, we only received 4 episodes. It's been 2.5 years since the first season wrapped up. Producing a show shouldn't take so long, especially a show like Invincible. With all due respect, but it only has passable animation, not great animation. Plus there aren't many episodes per season, just 8. This was almost everything animated from 2023 that I got to see. The year was very good for animation as some of the best movies and shows of recent years have been released. The animation varies in styles and techniques, which shows that the medium is constantly evolving and reinventing itself. And in 2024, there will also be a lot of great content. Hey, thanks for watching this video, Issei. Recently I've created my first big artistically ambitious project, which is a documentary about the history of Walt Disney Animation Studios. How Disney Brothers started their studio first, how Disney lost the animators due to strike and World War, how the studio almost ceased to exist at some point and how it was reborn. If you wanna support my channel, please take a look at my documentary.